Okay, so we're live on YouTube for the Front Runner Football Podcast. The name is Kamza. We're back at it again. It's a Monday as we recollect on what's happening in the South African footballing scene. And of course, the league has culminated. We've been amidst the playoffs that have been happening. Those have concluded. And of course, Black Leopards will have an opportunity to give it yet another go next season in the big time. So we'll touch on that. And of course, there's plenty else on the bone with Bafana friendlies coming up. Sundowns, it's kind of inevitable that it's time for them to ship some bodies out since they've had so many new faces coming in. And then, of course, one of the major appointments in Gavin Hunt for the Kaizer Chiefs job is something that's still kind of driving a lot of discussion as far as people are concerned. So let's get into that. But before we do, I want to introduce a new guest to the Front Runner Football Podcast, joining us from the Western Cape. He is the Western Cape Provincial Officer for the SAFJA and a General in his own right. Welcome, Rob Delport, to the Front Runner Football Podcast.
Well, thanks, guys.
It's good to have you. Just tell us a little bit of on what you've been working on, Rob. I mean, we're going to tap into you because obviously the playoffs have happened, and I know you keenly and closely follow Ajax Cape Town. But other than that, you know, as a member of SAFJA, as somebody who's obviously been looking for football to return, it's kind of ended now, and you know, we look ahead. How's 2020 treated you?
It's been different. You know, one of the things I've always enjoyed about being a football journalist is actually being at the football. And I haven't really done that since March. It's been a different year for me. It's probably the longest that I've been away from a football field. If I walk past grass and look at it differently at the moment, I miss it. And that's what this year's been like. You know, fortunately, apart from being a journalist, I'm also South Africa's head researcher for the Football Manager video games.
Right.
So I've been able to like look at data and work on updating squads and updating history of the players and things like that to keep me busy. But it's been crazy because it really I pride myself on being an on the ground journalist.
Right.
And this is the longest I've been off the ground, I think, that I can remember.
No, for sure.
It's yeah. I've obviously, like technology's made us be able to keep in contact with people, but it is different. It's like speaking to someone over a phone to speaking face to face.
Right.
You can't see people behind your back. You can't see what's going on. You don't. It's a lot of life is about things that happen around you while you're doing something, and
Yeah.
We haven't had a lot happening around us.
No, you're right. You're right. We haven't, but hopefully things will start getting back somewhat to normal as the world unravels towards normality. And of course, one of our other panelists is Velile Mnyandu, who joins us. Stavej, thank you so much for hopping on the podcast tonight. We're going to start with the national team, who now, I guess, you know, Malifinseki has a job to do in kind of picking the players who shone most throughout this bio bubble as we get ready for football to get back to the national stage in a couple of weeks' time. Stavej, welcome.
Good afternoon. Good evening, Kamza, and also to the debutant. I like the hair, Robbie.
Yeah, that's also grown. That's what I've been doing, growing my hair.
Yeah, no, first time I saw you, I thought maybe you were this new plumber who's coming to coach Leopards.
Yes, that's the other option.
Yeah, but what I can say, Kamza, is that, international football is also coming back. As we know, that international football, we saw earlier this month, it was only in Europe where we saw the UEFA Nations League. So now globally, all the countries are coming back, preparing for AFCON qualifiers, for World Cup qualifiers in different countries.
Yeah.
And I think in our situation here in Africa now, we've seen most countries, especially the big footballing nations on the continent, due to the restrictions around the movement of players, now they've scheduled most of their friendly matches in Europe. So there used to be a time when South Africa used to be in a situation like that. We had more of our players based in Europe, and we would even schedule our friendlies in the space. So you've seen with Nigeria, you've seen with Ghana, you've seen with Senegal, with Cote d'Ivoire. I think Morocco is also using the same route as well as Algeria. They are playing all their friendly matches in Europe so that they can not have problems. Because the reason that they have to use next month, it's because November becomes an AFCON qualifier period. And that's when they have to play back-to-back matches. In our case, we're playing Sao Tome and Principe on the 13th, and then the return leg, I think, is on the 17th or the 18th, around that. So the situation that we find ourselves in now, we have to play. We've secured 2 matches against countries from the COSAFA region, SADC politically. So when you consider now that we are playing Namibia on the 8th, and then on the 11th, which is on a Sunday, we're playing Zambia, and both games will take place at Royal Bafokeng Stadium. The Namibia game was supposed to be played in Namibia, but according to our counterparts from Windhoek, they prefer to come here because they are not sure about the organization of football back home. Because what they are saying is that, at least in South Africa, we're coming from the bio bubble in terms of having good measures of how to play under COVID. They can also learn from us. So it makes sense that they want to come here. The only tricky part, as things stand, is that there is some confusion from the announcement of going down to lockdown level 1 by the president as of yesterday. Because on Friday there was another update coming from, I think, the Minister of COPTA.
Corporate governance, yes.
Corporate governance, yes. In this case, because she was talking about a restriction on international sporting events. So, international sporting events, how does this affect these games that Bafana is already scheduled?
Right.
But how do you balance that with the return to international travel? If you allow international travel and then you don't allow this, and also this being African countries, because in terms of international travel, all African countries have been allowed to travel to South Africa.
Sure.
And these are neighboring countries, So, and also most of the players that Zambia, and for that matter, even Namibia will be using, are players who are already based here in South Africa,
Sure.
One of them signed, in fact, was unveiled by Orlando Pirates today, So I think there's that tricky situation. But I understand that from what we heard on Saturday, SAFA will be meeting the Ministry of Sport to get clarity on that, because it's not just about Bafana only. The return to football also, at some stage, especially around November, will also mean that Orlando Pirates, Mamelodi Sundowns, Kaizer Chiefs, and Celtic will also have to travel outside,
Sure.
also even welcome guests from outside to play CAF inter-club competitions. So those are the things that they are looking into now. But look, the coach will be announcing the squad on Wednesday, and expect a revamped squad, expect a refreshed Bafana squad as it prepares for the future.
Revamped and refreshed. Those are all interesting buzzwords you're using there, Stavage. And I guess at that point, Rob, being the statistician you are, and having looked at some of the performances in the bio bubble, players who've kind of put their hands up and made a strong case to be part of this refreshed and revamped Bafana squad for these upcoming friendlies and qualifiers?
Well, I think there's a lot of interesting selection things for Nseki to consider. And first of all, let's remember that we don't know what his actual team looks like, the one that he's revamping from, because he hasn't had a chance yet.
Sure.
So this is the first real chance that he's going to have to select a squad to give himself that identity. And I mean, look, we've seen comments where he is looking at revamping, looking at some of the younger players for them to become more senior players, like your Mokoena and Mbuli from SuperSport, who have been part of the national squads before, but not necessarily, the key members to build around.
Sure.
What's going to be interesting for me more is which players are going to be there from the previous squads, because the fact is we've had a lot of revamping every time a new coach has come in, and we've sometimes cut players too soon. I think that, like, I think Teko Modise's last cap was 5 years before he retired. Someone like even Shaba got cut. He got blamed for all the failures, for all the dancing and all of that, and got cut maybe before he should. So are we going to be revamping in the right areas is what I'm more worried about. Are we keeping the core of guys with international experience? So with Tyson unveiled today, I'm sure Tyson should still be a part of it. But we've got some brilliant young defenders who've come to the fore, like Rushen de Reuck at Maritzburg. Are we going to see him get a chance? Left back is an interesting one. A year or so, Klanti was on everybody's lips with an overseas move. This season, there's been a bunch of young guys who put their hands up in that position. Same with someone like Refrosler at right back, which has been a problem. We haven't had a solid right back, most probably since Anele was a regular. So the guys also, I mean, the bubble has given us a glimpse at a bunch of guys who could be in form, because that's something to look at. Because normally you look at the top, you'll look at the top three clubs and you'll think, okay, well, those are your main guys. You're going to select from those teams.
Right.
But while, yes, they're the teams that won the league eventually, they also had dips in form. If Chiefs and Sundowns had been 4th or 5th, they wouldn't have been near the top based on their bio-bubble performances. Other teams came to the fore then. So, and how is Nseki also looking at it? Is he looking at it only at young players who were shining, or is he going to look at some of the older guys who might not have had a chance? Being a Cape Town boy, I've spoken about him with 3 coaches now. Someone like Surprise Rolani, who really has never been capped, never been near the Bafana squad, even though he has been overseas, but was really good during the bio-bubble period.
Yeah, okay. And I think that's another interesting part about national team selection, because sometimes it's not really just about the form. You can be on form and be on top for your club at that particular moment, but when you put on that yellow jersey, international football is a different animal altogether. And so sometimes this is where we always have to find the balance, and also, and for me, this is where it helps when you have CAF interclub competitions, and you have clubs doing well. I mean, I'm really interested to see this year with Orlando Pirates, Kaizer Chiefs, and Orlando and World Sundowns, all in the CAF interclub competitions. I think it augurs well for us as the country. In fact, this is something that needs to be normalized, that these 3 teams must always find themselves in this space, because this is where most of the time the core of Bafana players are coming from. Because, I always find it interesting when people say they have problems with Bafana's performances, but the following week, those players returning to play for their clubs and they cheer them, Those are the same players who are playing for the national team, So if you're saying you're questioning the standard of Bafana, you might as well question the standard of where these players are coming from, because we derive the majority of our players from the local league, you understand? So if the standard there has to improve, it means that the standard also domestically also has to improve.
How does that happen, How do you do that? In the short space of time that the public requires for these changes to happen? How do you suddenly have this? Because patience is something that I don't think our public has, when it comes to these changes. Even though
I just think that through our history and having been excluded from international sport and international football, so we became this country that was more on club football, you know. Yes, look, we will be finishing 30 years in 2 years' time since our return to international football.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the time you do get the feeling that in terms of our mindset, our people are still too much club orientated and not, you know, when you listen to people in cricket, when you listen to people in rugby, you know, you will not get that thinking of, no, this one is coming from the Bulls, this one is coming from the Stormers, this one is coming from the Sharks, you know, or I'm coming from the border, you know. They just see one Springbok, you know, and they just see one Proteas. But with Bafana, you still have people, you know, if a player is coming from Chiefs or Pirates or Sundowns or Amazulu, you know. So that, and that's why you find that around Bafana, you hardly find that attachment of patriotism around Bafana. So, but that's another story for another day, you know.
Oh, I mean, discussion.
I come from that patriotism background. I was brought up in a cricket and rugby household, and discovered football as a very young kid. And I used to be the kid who would sit at home writing the Springbok 11 and picking Samuel Kambule and Ace Kuze long before Bafana existed. And all I ever wanted was a national football team. And so that patriotism question is something I've always found very interesting, because it's the one time I don't care where a player comes from when they're wearing the Bafana colors behind me. And it's something that I picked up as a journalist quite early on. Is like, you know, the fact is that that we had a lot of the support that was based around not even geographical patriotism. It was club patriotism. And if you go back to the beginning where the Chiefs and Pirates really did dominate Bafana, actually they also had their best support then, because it was Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates supporters, a lot of them going to the game, and they could cheer on half the team. You know, so it's an interesting dynamic that we have with that. And it's something that I really, it's not only sometimes the fans. I think sometimes it's the players as well. I think sometimes the players don't quite have that. I'm not talking about every single player, because a lot of them do. But that same pride. I mean, watching a national anthem being sung before a football game is very different to watching it be sung before the rugby game.
Right.
You know, the energy. It's a different dynamic.
It is a different dynamic, Rob. But I mean, I wonder if those players don't have a lot of that, what's on the outside filtering in, because like we say, I mean, the rugby boys will stand there with that pride because it's emanating from the stands. Whereas with the football guys, yes, it's people, the supporters, but the majority are looking at them thinking, oh boy, don't you guys mess this up.
Yeah, because
I think it is.
Also, this is the culture as well, you know, because when we're talking about rugby, as much as yes, we're excluded, were boycotted by the international world, but still there was still a Springbok, you know. We're going to play Rebel Tours, there's still a Springbok, you know. There was still a cricket national team, Proteas, you know. Back in those days, we cannot say the same about the football squad, you know.
No, and I say that even goes. I say that even goes to schools.
Yes, you know
the way at rugby schools, cricket schools create that fandom from the under-13 team, where soccer doesn't have that. So you don't have cheerleaders, you don't have the same energy because of real development at football level.
Yeah, but also if I look at, you know, when I engage and talk football with colleagues in Zambia, in Zimbabwe, you know, I mean, in Ghana, in Nigeria, you know, and you talk international football, you talk national team football, and compared to how I have that conversation here at home, is totally different. It's totally different. Now, sometimes I get that impression that even administratively, sometimes, there's a bit of immaturity from us as journalists here at home, from the football fans as well, and even from the administrators, in terms of international football, there are things that sometimes I feel that we lack, because, I think we're still babies in this.
Oh, well, that's the truth, is we are still babies.
Yeah.
And we also babies who sometimes spent a lot of our development time doing other things. We should have been focusing on football. Instead, we were building stadiums and hosting the rest of the world. And that takes a lot of energy away from, even success-wise, 96 we won, 98 we were second, 2000 we were third. Then we were working on stadiums, and what happened? What happened to the actual football?
Right.
And that took away. We brought some pride with the World Cup, but we forgot about the pride of the team. We brought the pride of the country. And I mean, look, this is a conversation that could, we are like Velile said, we babies in international football.
No, for sure.
And we were babies who walked very early on. So sometimes you have a different sort of pressure. If we won 96 already, so then our expectations were very high.
Yeah,
and we were babies who walked very early on, but we hadn't learned to talk yet.
Yes.
And so our genius level might not have been as high as we thought it was.
Well, I think, it's strange. You see the kind of parallels between the journey of South African football and the journey of us as a country. We've peaked with a lot of things, we've hit a lot of notes, but there are still issues, underlying issues that need to be taken care of. And it's a strange parallel, which is, right there as our country, as a narrative to follow. Gents, before we move on to other topics, this is coming in from the YouTube. In terms of the caliber of coach, people don't seem to believe that Coach Molefe Ntseki is the guy to, bring us success. He's seen as a stopgap. He's seen as the last of the alternatives. What do you think it's going to take, especially, as soon as announcing the squad, to kind of get everybody on side? Because obviously, we can all speak to the fact that if they start winning, he might buy himself time. But how does he get the buy-in now before we get onto the pitch? Because there doesn't seem to be a belief that he's the guy.
Yeah, look, I think this also goes back to the time when he was appointed. Because at the time when Stuart Baxter left, most people had this impression that maybe we're going to get a big-name coach. And I'm reminded of something Brashakes once said when he was Bafana coach, and I think he was appointing Thabo Silonga as his assistant at the time, and he said to me, so loosely translated, Rob, is that, you Velile, the problem with you like names, you like big names,
Big names, yes.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's like Hollywood. We all want Denzel Washington, and instead we get John Carney. And the fact is that John Carney might be better for the role. Denzel's accent might be a little off. But the fact is that for a lot of us, and I think with Molefe, it's a definite point. Like, we both know a lot of development football. So Molefe's not a stranger to me when he got appointed. But for a lot of other people, he really was. No one goes and watches Bloemfontein Celtic development. If you in the Eastern Cape, you might not even have heard of Harmony Academy. It's a difficult situation where somebody who actually, for me, has really good coaching credentials, but they're not in the public eye. They have been working behind the scenes.
Yeah. So when you look in this situation, is it something unique that you go for somebody who's been seen more as a development coach, but who's worked with all the national teams, and has been an assistant to the head coach at Bafana for the past 2 to 3 years, and even before that, he was also part of the technical team of the former coach Shakes Mashaba before Stuart Baxter. So should we really be surprised when he's appointed into that
But
position.
Billy,
And if
the question will be, are they going to use all of that from him? You know what I mean? Because the thing is, you say that, and it's a very good point that he's touched so many parts of the structure. But is that the vision? Is it to draw on that? Is it to have the continuity of having someone who's been in the system? Is that in the thinking of Safa?
That's
we don't know that.
That's why he's there. He's been working. The players who are playing under 23 today, majority of them are players who went to the World Cup under 15, under 17 in 2015 with him. You know, 5 years ago.
It's not even
close.
And then they proceeded with him, as part of the technical team under Thabo Sinong. They went to the under 20 World Cup. He was there. You know, those are the players. We're talking about a generation which has played 2 World Cups and now has also played the Olympics. And also within that period, he also went to another Olympic campaign with Owen Dagama, and he was there. You know, so
and he's been around for even before that. Because I mean, I didn't even realize, but guys like Kermit worked with Molefe. Because when Molefe was appointed, the first thing Kermit said to me was, "Hey, this is a good coach. I worked with him when I was young, and I'm really excited."
Yeah.
So the thing is that one of the positives is going to obviously be based about how the team performs. But from a player point of view, Molefe has worked with almost this entire generation of player. In fact, even some of the older guys at like Klompo, he would have worked with at Celtic. You know, so he most probably knows the players better than any other coach around at the moment. But as a national team coach, it is still going to come down to
results,
success, results.
Yeah, because another mistake that we make, Rob, even as we talk about refreshing now and we talk about developing, the national team is not a place to develop talent, you know, especially the senior national team. That's why you've got the under-17s, you've got the under-20, and you've got the under-23, right? That's where you build the team. At the senior international level, you expect results. You expect to qualify to the AFCON. It's a must. I mean, especially now that it's a 24-team AFCON. It's a must that you should be there at each and every edition.
Sure.
But most importantly, South Africa hasn't qualified to a World Cup since 2002. You know, I'm not talking about hosting in 2010.
Sure.
About qualifying to the World Cup. So, that becomes the biggest prize now. And when you look at Safa having this vision 2022, of which Molefe is in the middle of that, you know, and this is where I also support Rob to say, even the current national team captain, it was unveiled by Paris today, he was part of that 2009 Under-20 World Cup squad, where Molefe was the assistant to Sirameli Tswaka, you know. So, look, we know with local football, people believe in names, be it a big name coach coming from outside or here at home. Sometimes here at home, we don't believe in projects, you know, a project where we will be talking like we're talking about now, what Molefe knows and what he can do, you know. So, and also, sometimes also people maybe will mistake his demeanor of being just coming across as a quiet person, you know, and say, what has this one achieved, you know?
Yeah.
But let's give him time. I think he's just played 2 matches, you know. He lost one against Ghana, and he won one against Sudan. Let's see what he can do. But most importantly, the idea is to see what he's going to do in terms of refreshing the team, because previously it was not easy for him to bring up the under-23 players, because when Bafana was in camp, the under-23 were also in camp, maybe playing qualifiers or even going to the final tournament or preparation matches for the Olympics. So now the Olympics are only coming next year, you know. So now he's got these international dates that he has. Let's see how he's going to refresh at this team. And I think speaking to him on Saturday, you do get the impression that we must expect some under-23 players when the squad is announced on Wednesday. And also there will be some of the players who did well at the recent bubble, who will be him. And I would like to warn again that being on form doesn't automatically mean you are also at the same level, because international football is a different monster.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've also, to be fair, over the years, Bafana has been diluted because of having to play Kasafa, Chan, guys who've never played football for their club being selected for the national team and things like that. So I think a lot of that has also taken away some of the shine from being picked for your country. And that's something I hope that Molefe does bring back, is that player pride. You know, I always thought that it should be easy for a coach to pick a national team. He should turn on the TV from the matches before, and the players should say, look, pick me. Here I am scoring goals. Here I am saving. And I think that's something I'd like to see back. Because, I mean, we do see that in other sports. It's easy to pick somebody who hits a century in cricket or scores 4 tries. This season, I think we have seen a few players raise their own personal bars. Let's just go back to 2009. I'm a PE boy, so I'm a little biased with Kermit. He's somebody who's raised his own bar this personal season by scoring more goals than ever. And I hope that is also for the national team, because he is somebody who really in a computer world, if you had put Kermit Erasmus as a teenager into a computer game, now he would have 100 caps and 50 goals. Somehow he doesn't. It's partly his fault, partly national coach's fault, partly club's fault. And that's what I'd like to see with our national team again, is players raising the bar so that they are showing that to play international football, we are actually better than the other guys playing club football.
There we go. That's the football manager in you coming out, Rob. Busy giving us. Have you tried that experiment in the game of developing?
Listen, in a computer game, things are very different. There are no clubs are run out of a boot. Honestly, if you had to take our 32 PSL clubs and you've just put them in a computer game, they run a lot smoother. Every single club, no matter how wonderful they are, and this is not just South Africa, this is around the world, has human beings working for it. Right. And we ruin things, man. We ruin things as human beings.
So you'll get the club licensing expansion pack, then I'll be fine.
Yeah, you have to.
Okay, perfect. Gents, just touching on that note that we made in terms of the quality of the league. This has come through from Melo, the geologist, you know, in terms of how good are we really as a football nation. He makes the example of someone such as Samir Nukovic, right, who was kind of grabbed from the lower leagues in Serbia, can come here and set the league alight. You've had in terms of South Americans over the years coming through and also, making this a port of call. And then, I guess another example, if I was going to tack one on, is that if you look at the scoring charts, the guys at the top aren't our local players. So how good are we really? Very quickly. I mean, and this one can be a whole discussion on its own. But, when people make these examples, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Let's start with you, Vin.
Yeah, no, I think for me, as much as a part of this, we also have to blame SAFA, because when it comes to the amateur structures, they are in charge of the amateur structures. But also when you look at the clubs themselves, I remember just a week ago, we were having a conversation on a webinar with the joint committees, the Cape Town City chairman. And he was talking about that even within the PSL, they don't have standards in terms of, I think when it comes to CAF, if you don't have a CAF A license, for instance, you cannot sit on the bench, But I was seeing now in this bubble, people that I know that some are coaching, but you don't know if they have a CAF A license.
Right.
People are just being thrown in to go and coach,
Yeah.
But then you ask yourself, even at the MDC level, do we have those standards to say, because when we talk about it's important, because people will say sometimes, why are you talking about coaching certificates? But to produce skilled talent, you need skilled coaching.
Right, of course.
Of
course.
So,
coaches for the youngsters.
Yeah. So for me, and this is why I was saying, with all the resources and the infrastructure that we have, I don't take our neighbors lightly. When it comes to, because we've just said it now. Our top goal scorer, the other one is from Malawi, and the other one is coming from Namibia. Last year, the top goal scorer was from Zambia. They might not have the resources, but there's few things that they are doing right. And this, for me, the way things went with the organization of this bio bubble, it was showing me what we can achieve when the PSL and SAFA are working together. And this is something that I would like to see going forward. Because I just feel that the challenges that we're having are more on the technical side. And on the technical side, we are very weak, to be honest. And we don't seem to have a plan. You look at even the clubs in terms of the standards. If you look at our league with all the manuals that they've got, it's one of the best leagues on the continent with the manuals they've got on the running side of the game. But do they have that on the technical side?
I also think we don't have our own accent in that technical side. And it's, when I say accent, I mean like our own voice, our own tone to that. Like the fact is that it's why Samir Nurkovic can come here and do well, is because he's got a different accent and our players don't play like him. So he can come here and do well. Just like Dino and Gluvu cannot score goals in South Africa and can go score goals in different leagues because his accent suits those leagues. Sometimes, it's the football that we play, it just doesn't have I don't want to say our standard is low. I think we actually play pretty good football in some parts of the field. We haven't actually, I go back to right at the beginning of Bafana, where all the coaches said that we have to find our own style and we have to play Bafana style. Well, we don't really have that. If you're to pick up on what Velile said, if you're a kid from Ajax Cape Town and you go to academy there from 13 to 15, and then your father gets transferred to Joburg, and then you go to the Sundowns Academy, you're learning an entirely different language at Sundowns. There's no continuation. Where I'm pretty sure if you're at Arsenal Academy and then you go to Tottenham and then you go to Newcastle, there's a bit of an English language in the way you learn football.
Right.
Where like here, we've got development set up by Dutch people, by Romanian people, by South African people, by Italian people, by German. And we've got 11 official languages of our own already. It's so the fact is that we've got elements of a great league.
Right.
But they show up at different times and not necessarily. It's like a good song made up of 5 different verses from different songs.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Yeah, and for that to be resolved, Kamza, for a solution, there was a time when I thought the SAFA technical office, especially the technical director, especially under Serame Letswaka.
Yeah.
And for me, it's not a coincidence that right now Serame Letswaka is being more used by FIFA, NCAF, especially FIFA, to drive this technical vision in Southern Africa and also East Africa, because they've seen something in him, because I remember just before he left, he was on this tip of implementing this policy of making sure that in the PSL, this is the type of a coach who can coach in the PSL. You must have these standards,
yes.
But as soon as he left that office, that's the last time we heard about those things, because for me, even in the LFA, in the region, or in the provincial league, the ABC Mutsipe, or even and now in the National Women's League, or if even in the Glad Africa Championship, those standards must always be there. But on the technical side, in terms of the technical vision, I thought maybe he left with the whole manual, because in terms of advancing our game technically, that's when we just went off the road.
Yeah. So what do you make of this new technical director and the Technicals Brains Trust that's come up at SAFA? They've just appointed Mr. Jack Malulega as the chairman of the committee, which is the technical committee. And then he's joined by Buda Matate. And then, you've got the likes of Lucas Khatebe, Bubi Solomons, Farouk Khan, also there in and amongst that Brains Trust. Is it a positive thing, or is it just a matter of they just had to put some people? I mean, you never know where they're coming from sometimes with their intention. So what is the intention here?
No, in fact, there are just one or two new faces there. Those people have all been there previously. So
but now they're in touch. Some of them are in touch.
Yeah. The only person who's returning there is Ru, Lucas Khatebe, because he had been out. Because the last time, remember when we appointed Baxter, Lucas Khatebe was very clear that they were never consulted about the appointment of Baxter. At the time, if you remember, even when they brought in for that task team, they brought in, what was it again? Benny was also part of it at the time. So Ru is the only one who's coming back, and also Bubi Solomons was not there. I think Bubi Solomons, Rob, I'm sure you'll say more about him because he comes from his part of the land as well. So for me, those are the only new faces. The Buda Matate has always been there in that technical team. Jack Maluleke has been heading that technical committee, I think, for the past 2 to 3 years now. Farouk Khan has also been there previously. Maybe he might be making a return now, but he is not a new face in the technical committee. So I saw that report, but I just felt it was just one of those,
when it comes to technical committees and names like that, for me, it's all about results. I want to see what they actually do, because there's no doubt when I look at some of the names, they've some great footballing legends. There's certainly some very smart coaches in there, a few football geniuses, but do they all have the same opinion? Do they all, one of my big qualms about South African football, and even what we were talking about earlier, is that, like, even right now with us, there's lots of opinions, but opinions only matter when other people agree and you act on them, and you all get on the same page. Because I've been in a lot of situations where I'll be interviewing a coach and I'll listen to him and I'll think, man, that's such a smart answer. And then as I walk around the corner, his assistant will say, what an idiot. And so you realize that those two people are working together. They just have different opinions. So as long as you have a technical committee who are working in the same direction, that's great. And it's the same with the technical director. Listen, I actually think he's been around for a while working in the thing, so he might be better than Toby. I think sometimes having a big name like Neil Toby did, I mean, any failure we just blame Toby, and so sometimes what's Toby doing, because we don't know. So sometimes when you don't have a big name, that actually helps a bit as well, because you can actually do your work and what you're actually supposed to be doing. But that's my entire thing with SAFA and the national team. Anything to do with the national team is we are going to judge it on success. And the youth teams lately have me excited because they've had a bit of success, not complete success, but third is better than 13th.
For sure.
And so our youth teams are moving up. But the fact is that I'm someone who loves youth football. Velile is someone who loves youth football. A lot of other people don't watch the under 20s at all. They're not interested.
And they don't give a damn about it.
No. And that's the truth. I mean, to be honest with you, some of my favorite football memories are from youth games. And it shouldn't be that way. It should be Bafana memories. But that's those were moments that I thought we actually overachieved in.
Yeah, and that's why when people talk about Peter Shalulile, for instance, today, the impression of Peter Shalulile is not the one that I just saw at Highlands Park or playing for Namibia's national team. Peter Shalulile was playing for an under-19 at the Bay Hill tournament in 2011, playing in the final against the Ayanda Patosi. Patosi was playing at the time for ASD Academy. So that's why my impression of Peter Shalulile or the team that he was part of and where he comes from, it stems from that. But look, when we talk about this topic, we can be on it for
the whole day. Let's judge the technical committee when they do something. Whether it's a success or a failure, we don't know. We don't, because I honestly don't know what they do half the time. Committees meet. They
have a lot of meetings. Gents, let's keep it moving quickly and just focus in on that playoff victory for Black Leopards. I'm going to start with Ajax, as in, it must be a gut-wrenching past couple of weeks. You've come so close to winning it in the regular season, to only lose out on the last day. Then you have another opportunity up against two teams. The other one seems like they're not interested in it and don't mind if their neighbors get it. The other team, of course, want to stay in the big time, having had 30 opportunities to do so and not being able to. You must feel for Calvin Marlin and the boys. I mean, to come so far under such circumstances and still then have to go back to go try and do it again, Rob.
I started writing a story in the lockdown. With Markelman leaving for Sundowns, I was writing a story, and I rewrote it 13 times because of different results that happened each time. It was like, next week he's going to be league champion, and he's going to leave Ajax with having led. Then he was going to be captain of the league. And that's, unfortunately, I mean, the truth is that Ajax and Kaizer Chiefs will hate COVID-19 for many reasons that have got nothing to do with the disease. It ruined their seasons. I'm pretty sure that if football hadn't stopped in April, Ajax would be in the Premier League and Kaizer Chiefs would be champions. That didn't happen because of circumstance. I still don't know how they threw it away in the bio bubble when you have a 9-point lead with 4 games to go. That's performance. You can blame 101 reasons, but the fact is that, yes, they lost a few players to injury and all of that, but champion teams don't do that.
Sure.
And I'm talking about in Ajax or Chiefs situation. Champion teams do what Liverpool did when they resumed.
Yes.
And so Swallows were the champion team, not only because they were top for the last 2 games, but also over the past 6 months. The Glad Africa, I watched the whole season. In November, I would have told you Ngati was going to win the league. They were the best team for the beginning. Then Ajax took over, and when Brackies joined Swallows, they just carried on climbing. And I'm very pleased that Swallows did what they did. Unfortunately, on that last day, you see offside goals and things like that, but that's not what did it for Swallows. There's 30 games in the league. You can't grab little moments like that. This must be heartbreaking for everybody at Ajax, because, like I said, in April, I'm pretty sure they would have been promoted. When you get to the playoffs, Black Leopards won 4 games. They deserve to be still in the Premier League based on the playoffs. Ajax showed signs against TTM, but if you want to play in the Premier League, you've got to beat Black Leopards.
Yeah, but Rob, I'm more interested in Ajax. When they lost Coach Oldering, and you look at their results, sometimes even the margins, Ajax was even struggling to win by a 2-goal margin or a 3-goal margin.
I think the thing is with Ajax, that people, again, having watched a lot of them, they won a lot of games and they won well on occasions, but they didn't always play well. A lot of times, they had a really. I spoke to Coach Olderink a lot, and he must have screamed a lot of first halves, a lot of halftime breaks, because you'd have these moments where suddenly Mosia Tlhaga would score 2 beautiful goals, and the result would change. Ajax were about 80% away, 80% of a championship team, and when you took away factors like Mosia Tlhaga out injured, Markeman out injured, Musadi out injured, Nkhlapo out injured, suddenly they were a Glad Africa Championship team.
Yeah, but also we do take into consideration that also maybe in terms of the technical team that they had to finish the season, because if you look at a coach like Brendan Trotter, and we spoke to him about this during the presser at SAFJA, and he did say that division, Glad Africa, has got its own coaches, on how you have to maneuver around. There were games, for instance, that I felt Ajax, even in this bubble, that here they could have managed the game better, at least fight for a point.
One goal. One goal.
Yes, and you find them, it's the 85th minute, and they're leading, it's still 0-0 or 1-1 at the time, and they're still going. They're not managing the game because, you are leading by 3 points.
I think Calvin and Dylan are obviously rookie coaches, and I think they've got to also take responsibility for that. I think they're some of this. I think they took odd chances every now and then. They'd throw a youngster in believing he might do well, and he didn't. Then they'd throw one in and he did do well, so then they'd try it again the next game, and he didn't. And these are some of the rookie mistakes they made. I do think, listen, it's difficult because remember that after Olderink left, Ajax actually increased their lead at the top. They were only like 1 or 2 points at the top. And then, so I think it might have been a case that they trusted that Calvin and Dylan could do it. Mm-hmm. But I definitely think inexperience cost them.
Yeah, but still, even in that case, now as the management of the team, even if you want to put them in the forefront, but at least have some expertise on the bench, have experience. And this is where, for me, I know that people were questioning why Amazulu has gone for Alan Fries as an assistant coach. But fortunately, I had been in the presser midweek that week where Ayanda was unveiled as a permanent coach, Yes. And I asked him about the type of an assistant that he's looking for. And he spoke about an experienced coach. He spoke about someone who will be a mentor to him, as much as he'll be an assistant and he's the boss, but at the same time, he has to learn from his assistant.
Sure.
And I feel that it's not something new. It happens all over the world.
I think it's not only the coaches in Ajax's case. I think it's even some of the players. I don't think a lot of the players had experienced that sort of thing before. Even someone like Elazar with all that experience, has he ever been through these sorts of playoffs trying to go up? He's been playing in the Premier League most of his season. And a lot of the experienced guys hadn't experienced this.
Yeah, I felt at some stage he was also, especially in the bubble, and there was a game where I was screaming to say, but put in Elazar. Elazar is not there, And they start the game with 2 young strikers. And I'm like, what are they thinking? These are championship matches that they're playing now, And
no, you're right. Shui brought that up. You're right, in terms of them not relying on the experience.
Yes, and they introduced him. He scored a goal, but it was already too late.
Too late.
I think they.
I think there's a lot of hindsight, unfortunately, in like these sorts of situations, and I tend to think that it was a problem always. I'm an old firm believer in experience. I, again, bring up Grant Markeman. I actually think Markeman is a really good footballer, but he could have been twice as good had he had an experienced midfielder from the Ajax system next to him throughout his season. He had Travis Graham for a season, and then Travis got sidelined, and then Grant had to step up and become a senior player. I think in 2 seasons at Sundowns next to Klompo or Jali, he's going to blossom, because suddenly he's not going to have that sort of pressure. And I think what Velile is saying about Alan Freeze, I think it's the same sort of thing. I think if they had had a coach or someone with a bit of wily character on the bench next to them, even a goalkeeper coach who had been there, which they didn't. They were a rookie technical team.
There we go. And they got exposed. Speaking of technical teams, news just in. Arthur Zwane and Dylan Shepherd being appointed as Gavin Hunt's assistant coaches. Before we kind of, touch on him in a second. But yeah, essentially, these two gentlemen roped in, obviously Shepherd having worked with him at Bidvest Bits and Zwane knowing Chiefs. I always kind of find, these appointments of the assistants, very interesting, especially in a South African context, because assistant coaches are kind of seen as a bridge between the coach and the players, and sometimes it's kind of literal in some instances where, because a coach is a foreigner, it just makes sense that his assistant is a local guy who knows the club. What do you guys make of this balancing of clearly what maybe the club wanted in Zwane being there, and Dylan Shepherd and what Gavin Hunt wanted?
Yeah, look, this one is also interesting because Dylan, for some time, it looked like he was headed back to Sundowns. Remember, he also played there at Sundowns. So, and understand that they were trying to get him back into their youth structures. But when this opportunity came for Gavin, because Gavin, it was between Dylan and also someone like Kwanele Kopo. But having just recently worked with Dylan at Bidvest Wits, and Dylan having a very good track record in recent years of also helping to produce young talent, the likes of Rowan Human, Kunyedi, and a number of youngsters playing in that development team of Wits, were also players who were coming through his hands, and the likes of Caesar Mapala as well, and also the man who is now head of development at TS Galaxy, Ashley Makanya. So it's not really surprising, because for the past 3 years, Dylan has been coming up in the coaching structures. But Rob will also tell you the history between Gavin Hunt and Dylan Shepherd. It goes a long way back to the days of Seven Stars back in Cape Town. A young Dylan Shepherd who just came through the structures of School of Excellence at the time. That's where he got his professional football debut, and even in terms of coaching, in terms of hanging up his boots, he hung up his boots at Bidvest Wits, and then that's where he started coaching. So he's been sitting on the bench now there at Bidvest Wits. So it's not really a surprise that Coach Gavin has taken him along and is joining on a 3-year deal there as well. And when it comes to Arthur Zwane, it's always been a tradition at Kaizer Chiefs that they will have an assistant coach who will join on the bench to keep that tradition of having someone who knows the club inside out. So I see they continue with that. But I think one thing that we welcome is to see a big brand and a big team like Kaizer Chiefs finally having these two young assistant coaches, but having two assistant coaches, because this is going to be a demanding season for them. They will also be playing in the CAF Champions League as well. I remember when Pirates had Eric Tinkler, and back in 2013, they also had Tebogo Mloyi as well. Roger Disa, he will exchange them. On another trip, he will take Eric Tinkler. On another trip, he will take Tebogo, and the assistant coach who left behind will be working with the group that has remained behind, so that if they are playing a league fixture in 3 or 2 days' time, the team is ready. But also, we've seen now most teams around the world, they have two assistant coaches. We've seen it happening at Sundowns. Yes, after Rulani left, someone like Wendell Robinson became more of an assistant coach than just a goalkeeper coach. So it's good to see Kaizer Chiefs going that route as well. And I think this will also benefit Kaizer Chiefs as well. For Hunt to come to Kaizer Chiefs with an assistant coach who also understands what he needs. So in terms of his work as well, it's going to filter down to the players easily, because he's got an assistant who knows what is expected. And then he also has got an assistant who also comes from within the institution, having worked with the juniors. And the Kaizer Chiefs is going to be using a lot of players from the youth setup this season, especially if this transfer ban appeal doesn't go their way, and having someone like Arthur there who is also going to help to those players to find themselves in the same training ground, in the same changing room with them.
I think it's a great blend. I think it's something that's always bothered me when a club appoints a coach, when a coach doesn't bring one of their own assistants in. Because I think sometimes you get handed a car, you get handed the petrol, you get handed, and all you want is something that connects you to your technical team. And I think Dylan does that. I also think Dylan and Arthur, kind of the same generation of player, so they'll have a bit of a connection as well. And also, I mean, the fact is, I'm a big Sheppy fan as a coach. Again, having got to see him at like Bay Hill a few times, he's a really good young coach. He reminds me, I mean, not personality-wise, but he reminds me of someone like Eric Tinkler, who did all the steps to becoming a coach. Sheppy's worked with the young kids and from an early age, and I think he's done his diligence, working his way up to assistant. I think that he's going to make Gavin's life a lot easier. And like Velile just said, the fact is that it's all about how they work together as a technical team now. They're going to have to work with young players, and having two assistants who have that ability, and Gavin is someone who has that ability. I think it can benefit Chiefs if things go well.
Okay, let's talk about that to-do list for Gavin Hunt. He comes in with the specter of this ban looming over his head, Stavej. But I mean, if it happens that they can't bring in new faces, surely that changes the priorities a little bit. You might then see the African adventure, as important as it may be, take a bit of a, back burner if you're trying to go for the league. But yeah, let's, worst case scenario, he has to work with what he has. What do his priorities then become at Kaizer Chiefs?
But I want to read something very interesting for you, especially around this ban. So under the decision of the Dispute Resolution Chamber, which was taken by the DRC panel at FIFA, on point 8 on the decision, it says respondent 2, Kaizer Chiefs, shall be banned from registering any new players, either nationally or internationally, for the two next entire and consecutive registration periods following the notification of the present decision. So the notification was around February. So I think what this simply means that Kaizer Chiefs is banned from signing new players and registering them. It's banned. Let's say they're not banned from signing new players. They are banned from registering those players.
Right. So
if an offer comes now, a big offer, as I understand, I'm led to believe that there have been some good offers for Nukovic, and also there's been the talk of the Zuma offer as well, and there was also a talk of a Billiard offer as well. We can entertain those offers and make money now, But is that the priority now? Can you afford to weaken your team?
Yeah. The fans won't understand that. That's a hard sell.
But then again, Kaizer Chiefs will not be in breach of these rules if they sign a player.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the interesting.
And I think they've got 3 players already.
I think the interesting thing is also, the fact is that they were challenging for the title. A lot of Gavin's job is going to be to get them mentally back there, because it's obviously going to have been quite a big psychological thing to have been so close and then slipped. So that's a big part of it. I still think they've actually got a squad that can challenge for the league. The problem that they really face is that other squads that were challenging for the league have got some new vitamins. Some of them have got every letter of vitamin.
Right.
You know, and we don't even know all the vitamins they have because there's so many vitamins going there.
Yeah.
So it's that is the problem. But the fact is that this last season, it's again, I was writing a story about Velile Mnyandu, and halfway through the story, I had to say, well, this is where I was talking about Mnyandu having lifted the trophy. And I had to change the story because the thing is, that's going to be a big part of what Gavin has to do now. And I do think he's that type of coach to make them forget about what happened. Because that's going to be his biggest challenge, and getting them back to where they were in October, November last year, that they were challenging for this title, because again, one of the big, you know, as much as we talk about football and teaching tactics and things like that, one of the biggest roles a coach has is the psychological thing. He's dealing with 11 human beings. He's dealing with 7 human beings who aren't being picked. He has to handle them. And that is going to be Gavin's challenge, is to turn these guys back into challengers, that every single person in the team feels like a challenger again.
Yeah. I think also what is important, Rob, because we are awaiting the outcome of this transfer ban appeal. I've heard this weekend from certain people saying it could be coming out this week or even possibly next week. So we'll have to see how that, because these are clubs, these are people who are close to some legal matters, you know. So we'll have to see, because sometimes this case thing, it can take long. But I think what is important here, especially from the management side, if the ban is not successful, the management has to manage the expectations. You know, the management has to reach out to the fans, you know, because if the new coach is starting the season with still the same squad from last season, I think the management has to protect the coach.
Sure.
You know, and reach out to the fans to be understanding.
That they're in the transition stage.
Yeah, because one of the reasons I'm saying this is that we know that Gavin is a coach who also believes too much on wing play as well. And if you look at this Kaizer Chiefs team currently, there are no wingers there. You know, there are no wingers. And even the previous coach is someone who believes more on inverted wingers.
And he has 2 assistants who are wingers.
He has 2 assistants who are also wingers, yeah. You know, so surely for him to hit the ground running, he needs the market, you know, to go and find players who will suit his style. And unfortunately, the current squad is not full of players, especially even in the holding midfield role, you know, even in the defensive midfield zone as well. You know, he doesn't have those players, you know, even though he's got some of them, they've been signed, but they can't play.
Hey, there you are, being mystic again and cryptic, Velile.
Yeah.
But I mean, okay, so if he is able to buy and sell, and they say to him, listen, guys, we got to get someone out of here before we can bring someone in, based on the past, you know. And speaking to what you're saying in terms of the names being rumored in Abiliat, Nukovic, and Azuma, who can you, of those 3, can you let go of?
Yeah,
looking at their past season and then not feel too bad.
There's also an offer for Riv from overseas as well.
Okay, for Riv as well. So who do you let go of to make space? Looking at what they contributed or didn't contribute in the last season, if you want to make room for someone who can come and help the cause in terms of who's got offers out of those names, who do you then say, okay, let's cash in on this guy now based on what happened last season? Or do you leave the coach to try and get something out of them before those kinds of decisions can be made?
I know that Kaizer Chiefs think I'm crazy for saying this. But I would say they must take the offer for Nukovic.
Huh.
Yeah,
I'd even say you're crazy.
No.
He was the best performer last season.
No. They got him for free.
Yeah.
And there's a very good money on the table.
I can imagine, but it would. If I'm Gavin, I'm thinking tying my one hand behind my back.
And you take that money and go and buy 2 strikers.
Yeah, but Billy, we know what
One
happens
of them is in Devon.
when Kaizer
One of
Chiefs
them
comes.
is in Cape Town.
When Kaizer Chiefs comes calling, the prices go up. It's not that market. I mean, if we look at the economics of it.
But they'll make a lot of money from that Nukovic.
So you're saying with the money that they get for Nukovic, they can afford to comfortably pay for 2 new strikers?
They can pay for 3 players, in fact.
At normal market prices, not at Kaizer Chiefs inflated prices.
No, but you see, Kamza, I think it's high time now we talk about the model that Kaizer Chiefs must follow. You know, because we always hear that these players have been priced at a very high price for Kaizer Chiefs. So okay, what becomes the right model then? So if the right model, and you are going to see now, and I'm happy that Gavin is a coach who's been through to the group stages of the Champions League, in fact, of the CAF Confed. So just this past season, and for him now, he's tasted that. I'm saying to you, wait for the day Kaizer Chiefs. They've never been to the group stages of any CAF Interclub competition, but the day they make it there, because of the superiority of the brand, Kaizer Chiefs. Remember, when you play there, you get exposure. You get exposed to European countries.
Sure.
And that's why it's always easier, even for your players, to be marketable to especially clubs in France. And this is where they spotted someone like Munetsi. Munetsi for playing and also playing for Pirates in the CAF Champions League. He got that exposure, and he was signed there. And for instance, I thought even around Lodge, the impression I had, I thought Lodge maybe it was just from the AFCON, but apparently some of the clubs were chasing him from the group stages of the Champions League. So this is where now it becomes interesting. If Chiefs get into that space, some of their key players will get this attention. And now, come the end of the season, if there are good offers, because they've been playing in the Champions League in the group stages, there are good offers coming from European teams or even in Asia. It means that Chiefs, just from selling 2 players, they could be banking something around 50 to 60 million rands.
Sure.
And they use part of that money to buy at least 2 or 3 marquee signings here at home, but whilst using a good model. Coming up with good talent, be it from the academies or even from the Great Africa Championship. So it's all about a model now, and they've got a coach. Who can train a player coming. I mean, I'm reminded of someone like Ben Mutswari. Mutswari came straight from ABC Mutsipe, a team in Randfontein. But if you remember his first season in the PSL under Gavin, it was like a seasoned professional player who's always been there.
Yes.
So I think now it's about the model that Chiefs has to look into, and also sometimes when you sell your best player, and you will go and find 2 top talents from the so-called small clubs, you are addressing the issue of the salary bill as well. You are dropping the salary bill, and so even in terms of when you want to balance the books will balance.
No, for sure.
This language, balancing the books, is a language that Gavin Hunt knows very well where he's coming from.
Of course.
I think it's also about balance, because the fact is that if you're going to sell a player, you're going to have to replace him. So a lot of the time, before you sell a player, you make sure you have a replacement. And also, in the South African context, Nurkovic was great this season. I'm not putting any money on him being great this season. I've watched too much football, and the only person that I will guarantee you that is maybe Klompo. The fact is that every season he's as good as he was last season. Most players, I think back to Prince Khumalo at Ajax. when he scored 15 goals the one season.
Sure.
Yeah.
Offers came flooding in for him. Ajax didn't sell him. Prince didn't hit that target again.
Right.
You know, the fact is that sometimes if you're going to want to make money off a player, you have to sell him when he's hot.
Right.
Because next season, Aubrey Ngoma at Cape Town City, yes, they finally sold him to Sundowns, but he got injured at the beginning of the season. And then the Aubrey they got might not have been the same Aubrey anymore. This happens in football. So sometimes in a Nurkovic situation, I'd be tempted to sell him if I knew that I had another striker who might have had a similar record before he came. As a South African, I would sell Reef Frostler in a minute because that boy needs to develop even further. And the faster he gets into a European league, the faster he might get to an even higher league.
Right.
But that's just the Patriot in me wanting to see Frostler reach his potential, which unfortunately he will never do in South Africa because we have a ceiling. You know, you're only as good as who you're playing against. And until we have the same standard of opponents that a league like La Liga or Serie A or Bundesliga have, well, it's not going to be like that. So but from a Kaizer Chiefs point of view, as a club, as a privately owned company, I would want to hang on to them all.
Of course. Yeah, no, I guess it's going to be a bit of that. You speak about the balance, like Velile said, it's just, hold on to them for the season. Hopefully they put themselves on the stage and then you can sell them on. But it makes good sense. You've both made the case for getting rid of someone like Nurkovic whilst the interest is high. Does that mean that Lazarus Kambole then comes in to fill in the breach, or has that experiment failed? I mean, I'm trying to see where Gavin gets to play and where he gets to be a bit more realistic about what he needs to go and get. All of this under the umbrella of the club, kind of putting the message out there that, guys, yes, this is going to be a transformative season. And whilst we might not get close to winning the league again, we are trying to get close to that as soon as possible.
I only sell if they can buy. I only sell if they can buy, because otherwise it's going to be a very transformative season.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and also, you see, for Chiefs, if the ban is not the appeal is not successful, it also doesn't mean that they must wait until next season to buy.
Of course.
Rather they must buy now and park. Because in the case of Sundowns, some of the players who are joining Sundowns now were not necessarily bought in this window.
Of course.
So maybe it's also high time that going forward, even for Chiefs in terms of planning, in terms of doing their business around the space, they must do things differently.
Yeah.
So I think back to your point about Kambole. I mean, I've heard that even when it comes to billiard, the coach could be coming with a totally different way of using billiard to how he was used by Ernst Miranda. And I won't be surprised that he will also be thinking along the same lines when it comes to Kambole as well, because Kambole is also more of a striker who flourishes when he plays central.
Sure.
And that's why he used to play for Zesco as well. So remember, Gavin is a totally different coach to Ernst in terms of how he sets up his team and what he expects, and also players who are not hard workers are going to struggle to make it, and I think I'm also I'm listening to what Rob is saying about Nurkovic. This is going to be his second season, and here in the bubble, I had seen teams which had figured him out, and there was no other option for him because Nurkovic on the floor, not that great. Running with the ball, not that great. But aerially and being clever in terms of setting up for his teammates, perfect.
Right.
And if you've always noticed, Gavin strikers have got a bit of mobility in them as well. So that's why I'm saying if there's an opportunity to sell him and get two top players, even if they're not going to get them now, do it, because by the time you want to sell him, those suitors will not be there.
Yeah, and I think in Kaizer Chiefs' case with buying, they also have to realize that you are going to have to spend money if you want to buy a Kaizer Chiefs player. I mean, buy a player for Kaizer Chiefs. You know, the fact is that Kaizer Chiefs, Orlando Pirates, Sundowns, when they go and sign players from other clubs, they're not signing the fringe players from those other clubs.
Sure.
They're signing the family heirloom at the club.
Right.
And you're going to pay more for the family heirloom. You know, the fact is Sundowns have done that. Sundowns have been willing to spend on a player over the past few seasons. And it's the reason their players' levels are, you know, they're buying the best.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's not been that case with Chiefs over the past decade. I'm growing up when I watched Kaizer Chiefs. If 5 players were injured, 5 superstars came into that team to replace them. Every single person who wore the Kaizer Chiefs jersey was a superstar when I was a kid.
Right.
I'm not so sure there's a lot of superstars wearing Kaizer Chiefs jerseys over the past few seasons. Not superstars, maybe stars, maybe big names.
Sure.
Maybe.
Yeah, I hear your point, and that's a good one. But to both of you, I mean, looking at the market and who's available, I mean, you guys have touched on Erasmus and Nduli. They might be, you know, I mean, yes, they know the league, but do they represent the best value for money, do you think, in the league?
For me, it depends on the coach's relationship with those players. Because again, I'm a big Kermit fan, being a PE boy, and I've always loved watching his career. But he is he's a human being, and he has a certain mentality that with the right coach, he's the superstar. If you don't treat him a certain way, he's not. Gavin knows Kermit. Okay, I don't know about Bongi and Tuli.
He promoted him to professional football.
Yeah, so in Kermit's case, it could work out brilliantly because of that. But it could also mean that you're taking Kermit back to Joburg, and maybe Cape Town has brought a bit of peace to him. You know, I saw that with guys like Majoro. He's just a nicer guy on the coast. You know, and he plays better. He's a little more relaxed. And I think that something that is very underrated is how heavy that Kaizer Chiefs jersey is now, because of all the superstars from the year before. You know, I had one former Kaizer Chiefs player tell me that he wanted his jersey number retired because every time he saw a player wearing his jersey number, he was embarrassed. And that is, I'm talking about, and that is an added pressure on the current players because he told me that as a journalist. How many players has he told that?
Right, of course. I hear you. You make a good point. But let's see how it pans out. I think this adventure that Gavin is about to undertake has everybody waiting with bated breath. And of course, the appeal is a big part of that. And of course, let's see what that squad announcement also brings. Gents, I'd like to say thank you so much. We've had a robust, almost 90-minute discussion around what's been in the news cycle. And I really appreciate your thoughts and your impressions.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. And to everybody who's been tuned in via YouTube, via Twitter, wherever you may be, sending us through questions and just participating and keeping up the streams and the viewership. We really do appreciate you too. We will convene again to recall all things South African football in a matter of days. For myself, Kamza, and of course, Velile, who's behind the scenes controlling everything. We'll catch you again in a couple of days. Rob, Velile, thank you so much. Peace.
Cheers, guys.
Hey, ta-da.